Hi students, this is Dr. Leffler, and this short video talks about reflection paper number 1 for Social Work 621. You will write 4 reflective essays over the course of the semester, and each of these relates to a major theme in the class. These reflective essays are professionally written, so use that professional voice and tone, use APA style for your formatting of your paper and your references, and adhere to APA format in terms of your voice, your grammar, mechanics, etc. Note that you may use first-person voice. It's a misnomer that APA disallows first-person. You may use first-person and still maintain APA formatting style. Your paper is expected to be approximately 4 pages, and that would exclude your title page and your reference page. In a paper such as this, there's no abstract required. Just a quick note, you'll see this note at the top of each of these reflection assignments. So I'm going to skip to the bottom of this slide. Find balance in these reflective essays. Who you are and how you came to the social work profession is super important and certainly informs your understanding and your engagement with the topic, particularly this one. It's talking about bias and how you have experienced or biases you may hold. So as you use your own experiences, just remember to do so in a professional and self-reflective way. This is not necessarily just an autobiographical essay in and of itself. So ground your self-reflection in professional behavior and think about what it is appropriate to share and how you share that as it helps to develop you as a social work professional. If you have questions about that, certainly let me know. So it's really important to utilize the content and material from the class as you write these reflective essays. Show connectivity to course material. That's really key. It shows that you're demonstrating that connectivity between what we're talking about, what you're reading, and how you're thinking and processing that information. So this does mean that you'll need to use both in-text references and a works cited page. This particular reflective essay, essay number 1, is asking you to look at the topic of bias, which is something that we tackle in the class during week 2. So in week 2, we talk and you read about implicit and explicit bias, and I want you to think about those in terms of how you understand and differentiate each of those. So question 1 asks you to define bias and talk about how you differentiate implicit and explicit bias. Question 2 asks you to reflect on explicit bias and how it's shaped your view of the other and how you've recognized this and challenged this. So think about this in terms of your own work and life and how bias has impacted how you see other people, how other people see you, and talk about that and think about that as it relates to your future as a social work practitioner. Question number 3 asks, what have you learned from the readings about implicit bias and how does that impact the world we live in? So implicit bias is a sometimes controversial topic. Whether or not bias is truly implicit is argued. The Atlantic Monthly piece touched on that a little bit. But think about your understanding about implicit bias and what it is. How do you think that impacts the world we live in, the things we hear about in the news, the way that we act and react to different people in the world around us? Prompt number 4, question number 4, is asking when you have been discriminated against or judged based upon somebody else's bias and how you've responded to that. So this is where we're asking you to delve in and reflect on your own experiences. Again, doing so, still maintaining that professional voice and keeping your writing professional. So, and I thank you right here for sharing that in your writing. It is asking for you to talk about something personal. So thank you for being willing to do that and be able to use your own experiences to think and really think about the experiences of clients and client groups that you may work with in the future. So that leads us to question number 5, which is, how do you understand bias as a social work professional? When do you think you're going to encounter bias in professional life? And how are you going to understand and manage bias as you do encounter it? That may be encountering bias that someone holds against you as the social work professional. It may be bias that you understand that you hold against a particular group of people. It may be bias you develop in practice. It may be bias that somebody else you work with has. So there's a lot of different ways to look at that, and I do want you to reflect on that and think about that and think about how you are going to understand and continually understand, reflect on, and manage bias that you see in your professional work as a social worker. So what are you going to integrate into this paper? Here's just that quick list of the things you're asked to read, listen to, and watch for week 2. So certainly those are the kinds of things, of course, we want you to bring in. So the TED Talk, Walking Boldly Towards Your Bias, I think this is a really great starting point, and certainly something you can reference in this paper. These are not all academic readings, and that's okay. These are the assignments, so these are what I'd like to see you integrating into this paper. So thinking up about, what does it mean? What does Myers mean when she talks about walking boldly towards our bias? Can you do that? How do you do that? Thinking about, what is implicit bias? Do I have implicit bias? And then thinking about this speak up, responding to everyday bigotry reading is really interesting. And how does that address bias, and what do you think about that? How does that inform what you're doing, what you're writing about, what you're thinking about? All of these, all these readings can be integrated into this reflection. Certainly you don't have to integrate all of them in, but each of them would have a place as you're thinking about the assignment. So just a couple of resources for you. Of course, your APA style manual is really important. I can't stress enough how important it is to have a copy of that publication manual. Really good resource. You should be able to pick one up used on Amazon. Make sure you get that blue 6th edition. And there's also, Purdue University does have a really nice resource, the Purdue OWL, that a lot of our students find really helpful in terms of how to utilize APA formatting for papers. Particularly in this paper, you're citing a TED Talk, so you're going to cite that differently than you would cite a written article, things like that. So keep in mind your page limit, writing in an academic voice, using APA style formatting, and all those different elements of APA style that make it the preferred writing format for the social work profession. APA talks a lot about using economy of voice, so not that really lengthy descriptive type of writing, but a really thoughtful, yet, I'm not thinking of the right word, I guess a thoughtful but to the point way of writing and talking about things. So if you're not familiar with APA style, I do recommend just reading the manual, reading through what APA says about how to write professionally, and reading through the preferences about language and non-biased language and all those different things. So that all comes in, I'm looking at the table of the contents of the style manual right now to tell you where I think you should find that information. So that's chapter 3 of the APA style manual, which is just all about writing clearly and concisely. So some of that is not applicable for a paper like this in terms of headings and how you use headings. But the section on writing style is really important and really helpful. Also, there's a section on reducing bias in your language, and that's also important. So, and then grammar. So really, section 3 and section 4 of the APA style manual hit on how do we write. What does your writing actually sound like? How do you use words? How do you use grammar? And then the different mechanics in terms of APA expectations regarding punctuation, commas, semicolons, etc. So I do recommend flipping through those if you haven't spent any time. I know that in the profession of social work and certainly in the MSW program, we tell you to utilize the APA style manual. Yet I'm not sure how many folks sit down and read through the manual, so I do make that recommendation to you early in the semester. If you have any questions as you move forward writing this paper, of course, shoot off an email. I'll be happy to respond to that. So I look forward to reading your assignments. Thanks so much.